Hey everybody, welcome back for another video. Today we're going to be talking about Baltimore and connections with Ireland, maybe the Phoenicians. Should be interesting, so let's get into it. Now, lately I've been looking into coins a lot of these coins from 16 and 17, even 1800s, and I came across a St. Patrick's halfpenny, which shows him holding what looks like a shamrock, but I think maybe it could actually just be a cross or something else. And this figure, which is described as St. Patrick, is wearing one of these mitre hats. And there's actually no date on the coin, but we're told it comes from the mid to late 1600s. But when you actually start looking at this link between St. Patrick and the shamrock, it's only more recently that this association has been actually made. And historians actually believe the first link between St. Patrick and the shamrock can be found as a result of these coins and what's depicted on it. So I find that fairly interesting because, again, St. Patrick is supposed to be this figure from the 5th century AD, a long time ago, but this connection is really only popularized over 1,000 years after his death. So I'm not sure if indeed he even is holding a shamrock in his right hand there. And just another snippet from an article just talking about how there's actually no historical basis for the association of the saint with shamrock, the plant. And yeah, interesting coin. And this got me started down this road, which we're going to start looking into with regards to Baltimore and all these things. But I just briefly wanted to touch upon it because I found it kind of interesting. But on the obverse or front of the coin, it shows figure we're told is King David, may or may not be. And this is supposed to be St. Patrick on the reverse. There's another reverse of that coin that shows this figure described as St. Patrick and does appear to be driving out these snakes. And that is the myth, right? St. Patrick drove out all the snakes from Ireland. But when you look into the history of that, it appears snakes never even really came to Ireland. There are no signs of snakes in Ireland's fossil record. So could this be more allegorical, maybe of a religion, maybe driving some group out? Again, these are just thoughts, but I don't necessarily think it's physical snakes. And that's where things start to take a turn, because I've also been looking into these lighthouses of Ireland and even some of these beacons, and I came across one really interesting one called the Baltimore Beacon. And there's a Baltimore Harbor, a Baltimore Bay, and there's a village called Baltimore. So I wanted to look into this area on older maps. And before I do, I just should mention this village, Baltimore. We're told it was sacked in 1631 by Barbary pirates. The town was depopulated in 1631, according to the history. But I came across some older maps. There's a Mercator Atlas from 1595, and wanted to look up close into this area where the Baltimore village is and that beacon as well. I wanted to look into that area on these maps. So when you zoom in on this area, I couldn't find that actual village here, but there does appear to be another village named. But there is this bay, I believe this Baltimore Bay in our present day is, I would put it here, but now it's out here. But the interesting thing about this old map, instead of calling it Baltimore Bay, they call it Baltimore Bay. And I recognize this name, or the Baltimore, I recognize this from certain deities from the Phoenician religion. So I wanted to look into that connection a bit more. And when you look up that particular name, BAALAT, when you look into that connection, there is a goddess called BAALAT Gebel, or the Lady of Byblos. And Byblos is one of these old world cities. It's in present day Lebanon, and there are still the ruins of this temple dedicated to this goddess BAALAT Gebel, or the Lady of Byblos. And there were some of these interesting cone-headed figurines found deposited in this temple. This is roughly where they tell us Phoenicia was, or part of it anyway. And this is that city. So when you look into some of the coins, the Roman coins too, from this old world city, Byblos, they feature a temple, and it has a courtyard, and it has one of these really interesting sacred stones, sacred cone, and that's going to play a big part here in the video in a second. But here's a layout of that temple might have looked with the courtyard, and this is one of these Phoenician cult stones. So I found in this article they were just talking about how there is no doubt that Byblos possessed as its central object of worship a cone-shaped pillar standing for the Lady of Byblos, BAALAT, Gebal, and then she goes by different names: Aphrodite, Venus, Isis, Hathor. So this is one of these, we're told, Phoenician cult stones, and it was an object of worship, and it has a relation to this BAALAT, Gebal, or Lady of Byblos. Now that's going to take us back to these lighthouses and beacons of Ireland, because there is one of these beacons associated with this village, the Baltimore Beacon. And again, the bay used to be called BAALAT Timor Bay, but now it's called Baltimore Bay. It's been moved, but we have all these references to Baltimore, and we have this oddly cone-shaped beacon, and strangely the lighthouse isn't actually even lit. It was just whitewashed basically, which they thought would be enough to warn any approaching ships of coming too close to the coast. But they've actually since put up a lighthouse on the other side of the cliffs. So I'm thinking this might actually be one of these Phoenician cult stones. This conical shaped beacon is just being misrepresented. But now there's another element to this, and these goddess statues. So there is an interesting statue that shows up in this area of Ireland, and it's this Baltimore statue. This is a county in Ireland. One of Longford's most curious monuments is this granite ornate statue commonly known as Lady Baltimore, Lady BAALAT Gebal, situated on Baltimore Lane, and it was shipped over from Baltimore, Maryland, actually in 1974, and it comes with a plaque that is interesting because there's a potential discrepancy with what the plaque is saying and where it's located. But it was shipped over by this group called the Friendly Sons of St. Patrick's. We're going to get into this plaque. So this group called the Friendly Sons of St. Patrick, they shipped over this 10-ton statue in 1974, and it's in this somewhat remote area. But the plaque says, "To the town of Baltimore, in the county Longford of Ireland, from the city of Baltimore," and it goes on, but it was in the summer of 1974. Now, what is interesting about this plaque is there doesn't appear to be a town of Baltimore, at least in our present day, in the county Longford. And I came across the snippet from this article just mentioning how the second aspect remains a mystery because we still don't know where Baltimore in the county Longford is. What is most tantalizing, however, is that the narrow grass-grown laneway leading to the field is known locally as Baltimore Lane. It isn't at all clear how this nondescript pathway got its name, but the fact is that no map or document has been discovered to tell us where Baltimore is or was. Indeed, we may never even know. So could these people who sent the statue just made a mistake? It's possible, but I think maybe in older times this place or area was a Phoenician place of worship, and this goddess, this Lady of Byblos, BAALAT Gebal, now called Baltimore, Lady Baltimore maybe. I think that's what might be happening. So I don't think they make mistakes when it comes to these deities. I don't think they're making mistakes, but that's just an opinion. But then there's another twist to this. There was this Englishman in the 1600s called George Calvert, and he projected the founding of the North American province of Maryland in an effort to find a sanctuary for practicing Roman Catholics. But George Calvert, he was given this title. A title was created called the Baron Baltimore. So this title was created in 1625 and it ended in 1771, and there were 6 of these Baron Baltimores, or Lord Baltimore for short. So this George Calvert was given this title of Baron Baltimore. He was given land in this area, and his son, I believe, who was considered the second Lord Baltimore or Baron Baltimore, it's after him that Baltimore City in Maryland is named after. And there's a really interesting monument. I believe we're told it's a war monument. And there is this column that is a fasces, but sitting on top of this column is a figure colloquially known as Lady Baltimore. So I think this is representing that same goddess, BAALAT, or however you pronounce that, and it's just been turned into Baltimore. But again, that is my opinion, and the city of Baltimore even uses this monument with this goddess sitting on top of it as their city seal. So I think what we're looking at is just this effort to keep this goddess worship alive. And what's going on with this St. Patrick driving out the snakes, maybe it was getting rid of this religion, maybe, I don't know. But just really, I found this really interesting, and some of these beacons, which might be these Phoenician cult stones, and it's just a really unique story, and I just wanted to kind of share it with you guys. But I think that's about all I got for you for today. I just want to touch on some of these subjects. And I do want to give a big shout out to my channel members. Thank you for all your help and support, as well as my patrons. Thank you as well. I really appreciate all the support that you guys give me as well. So thank you very much. So with that being said, until next time, take care. Bye.